All right, here we go. Today, we're going to be talking about how to be the greatest salespeople in the world and all the things I've learned from coaching hundreds and hundreds of salespeople and leading hundreds of salespeople and being one of the best salespeople I've seen. So we're going to jump into a bunch. Again, it's super important to me that everybody's super locked in as we're going. And then I'm going to just talk a lot. I'm going to get rolling into all of this. And we'll save time at the end for questions or topics or anything anybody wants to talk through. There's no such thing as a bad question. There's no such thing as a bad topic for us to talk about. But we'll hit them all at the end because I'm going to get rolling through this. There will be a recording and I will send everybody the slides. But I still recommend that you take notes as I talk because you're going to hear specific things that you need to hear and you need to take notes of what those are so you have them as you go. So, greatest salespeople, greatest salesperson in the world. Let's get into it. What's possible? So RCA, Remote Closing Academy, is a sales training company I started January 1st of 2021. And when I started, we went from 0 to $1 million a month in 8 months. For me personally, I led a sales team of 8 to 10 people. And this is all concurrently. So all at the same time, within those 8 months, I led a sales team of 8 to 10 people. I managed all of our client success. Quite literally, I was the only CSM, only client success person. It was just me running group calls and doing recruiting and creating connections and had help, but it was me leading it all out. For 8 months, I maintained over 25 units a month. Months like 6 through 8, that tailed off a little bit, but I made up for it in the average on months 1 through 3. And then I closed over 45% every single month. So I did all of these things all at the same time for 8 months in a row. And I don't preface that to have it be like an ego dump or self-aggrandizing, but I think in order for us to really recognize what we can do, sometimes it's helpful to know what somebody else has done. It's like when somebody ran the 4-minute mile, it was a lot easier for other people to run the 4-minute mile. And I also want to preface that because all of the things that I'm going to ask you to do and all the things that I am suggesting that you do are things that directly worked for me and for our team. So for 2.5 years, all of our closers were over 40% live call to close on a $9,800 offer. And all of our setters produced 22 plus set closes in a month for 2.5 years, almost 3 years. So these principles that we're going to go over are very long-standing and worked for a lot of people for a long time. So number one, I think I skipped a slide. Okay, so the greatest has mastered the following, and we're going to go into every single one of these in detail. But in order of importance, they've mastered alignment between sales and their goals. They've mastered their internal dialogue and their belief systems. They've mastered leadership and service, standards and projections, state management, raising the tide for everyone around them, and owning their book of business. If a salesperson or a client success person, or frankly, anybody in life and business can master these 7 things, they will win at unimaginable levels. So we're going to go into every single one individually. Alignment between sales and their goals. When you think about alignment, for me, I always think about like a steel pole. And as soon as point A and point B are not connected by that steel pole anymore, the system breaks. Or alignment is like a line of code that's going for a very specific outcome. And as soon as you change the code or you change the destination, everything breaks. You just get an error screen. And the same thing happens in humans. Let me know in the chat, drop a 1 if you've ever experienced having like a week where Monday and Tuesday you feel on top of the world and like you're ready to create everything you've ever wanted to create, but then by Friday you just wonder what you're all doing it for, and it's like, why am I even here? Let me know if any of you have had that. The reason that happens for human beings is because in times of alignment between our action and goals, we are remarkably inspired and we're remarkably in purpose. We're doing everything out of a sense of purpose. And the minute that alignment breaks, our ego and our self and our energy reserves are like, I don't even know what we're doing all of this for. And a lot of people think that it's because of burnout or it's because of their energy management. People put a lot of reason behind that, but the easiest way to describe it is you're either in alignment between sales and what you're doing day to day. You could replace sales with just actions. And you're either in alignment between what you're doing day to day and your goals, or you're not. And the minute you're not, you'll wake up and you'll wonder what you're all doing it for. So it's universal law, quantum physics, that when a desire or a goal is set and we move towards that goal with 100% of our being and focus our energy there, it is required to happen. So I'm going to read that again. It is universal law that when a desire or goal is set and we move toward that goal with 100% of our being and focus our energy there, it's required to happen. So there's two principles that are fascinating. One is the Heisenberg principle. And when Heisenberg was creating the atomic bomb, one of the things that he observed was that when they would start putting energy towards the atoms that they were studying, the shape of those atoms would change and the form of those atoms would be manipulated just by thought alone. So this was one of the very first introductions we had into quantum physics and into quantum entanglement. And he was the first person to recognize that just by putting a thought towards a thing, the thing itself changed. Quantum entanglement states that you can have two completely separate entities, one over here, one over here. And the minute that one of them is thought about, the other changes. And when the other thing changes, this original thing changes as well. Here's why it's important for you all to understand those two principles. When you as a salesperson sets an intention like, you know what, I want to close at 50% live call to close, that very thought alone starts to entangle and change the fabric of outcomes in the universe. And I know this is hard to understand because our brains think very linear. They think like 1 + 1 = 2. And so it's hard for your brain to understand this because we don't think non-linearly. But you need to understand that it is science. And so if you think about the fact that you're missing projections and you put energy towards the fact that you think you're not good enough, guess what you're going to get a lot more of? Missing projections and not being good enough. If you spend time moving energy towards being the best and closing at 50% and making the amount of money what you want to make, that's what's going to happen. It's universal law. And so intention meaning the conscious energy towards an idea or an outcome or activity, is the key behind all creation. And I use the word create because ultimately everybody's a salesperson because they want to create some form of reality for themselves. We get into sales, we get into client-facing roles, we get into business because we want to create income for ourselves. We want to help people. We want to curate our dream life. We want to go accomplish our goals. We want to create. And intention is the key behind all creation. When we wait for things to happen, we do not attract. And when we're all in, all things are ours to create. So one of the things that I see all of us doing wrong at Springs right now, just to be super transparent with you, is most of us are in a very reactive energy. I've had a lot of calls with a lot of you, and one of the first questions I always ask is like, how has your week been? How has sales been? And 95% of the answers have been some sort of reactive, this thing happened to me answer. So something like, oh, well, I didn't get enough leads this week. Or like, oh, I had some more no-shows than I want. Or, oh man, quality just wasn't quite there this week. It's all external, reactive-based thoughts and energy. The best salesperson in the world says, dude, my week was fucking amazing. It was great. And if I said, yeah, but you're only at 1 unit and you projected 7, the greatest salesperson in the world would look at me and you'd be like, yeah, but dude, it's Friday morning. I still got 72 hours. Like, yeah, I've only had 1 live call this week, but guess what I do have? I have a Go High level full of leads. I have an open calendar today. You better believe I'm finding 7 people to close this weekend. And when I've talked to a lot of setters in our company and I say, hey, why are you missing sets this week? I've gotten a lot of answers like, well, you know, I'm doing everything I can. I'm calling the leads. Oh man, the closers dropped the ball on some calls, but the best setters in the world go, you know what? It's been an amazing week. Yeah, the closers have dropped the ball, but it doesn't matter. I'll put up so many good sets. I'll do the follow-up myself. I'll get them across the line. I'm not going to come into Monday with missing projections. That's not even, I'm not letting that reality be created. So again, intention is the key behind call creation. And the difference between somebody that consciously creates their reality every single day versus somebody that's just a feather in the wind, like the New Testament describes, is the intention behind their actions and whether or not they're somebody that creates or is reactive. And right now, I think a lot of us in Springs have a very reactive energy. Let me know in the chat if this is making sense to everybody. So we're going to talk about some things to change that so we can be more in intention. And I'm going to talk about some things at the end of the call that we're going to change as a group for us to move towards projections faster and more aggressively as a company. But one thing I will from today on hold all of you accountable to is whether your energy is in a place of reactivity or whether it's in a place of intention and creation. And there is no bounds that say, oh man, it's Friday and I'm only at this, looks like I missed. There is no bounds that say as a closer, you just have to sit there and wait for calls to show up in Zoom. There is no bounds on you as a setter that says like, oh, I just got to hope and pray that the closers close. Every single one of you has the power to influence and create. And when you don't own that, you're a feather in the wind. When you don't own the fact that you can create every outcome you want, you're just waiting for things to happen. And that's not what the greatest salespeople in the world do. One of the stories I love, I think I saw Susan is on this call. When we launched the hair team, like for the first like 4 months, Susan had a show rate from direct bookings of like 75%. And all the other closers had like a 30% show rate. When I asked Ryan why, he looked at me and he was like, dude, I've never seen anybody be more intense with their calendar management in my life. Like she triple dials, she triple texts. If they don't show up, she calls again the next morning and then she calls again the next day. And Susan does every single thing in her power to make sure she has enough live calls. That is moving forward with intention, and that is creating reality. That is not being reactive and waiting to see if people show up, but it's making sure that they do. Nick Zapata, I don't know if he's here, is on the hair setter team. I don't know the exact number, but I'm pretty sure that guy averages like 35 sets a week. It's some insane number. And he does that by waking up every single day and creating insane intention behind the creation of a large volume of sets. It's very intentional action that he takes. I've been doing coaching with some of you, and hopefully nobody's bothered that I'm calling them out. But one of my favorite coaching moments so far has been with Allie on the hair team. And she had a little bit of a slow July. And part of it was just not having that many calls. Part of it was not being in the best headspace. And towards the end of July, beginning of August, we recalibrated her intentions into a place of creation. So she demanded that she get more live calls, and she started aligning all of her actions to with what she wanted to create rather than reacting to what was. I don't know the numbers now, but I'm pretty sure she's dominating this month. I think last I checked, she had like a 40% call to close for the month of August. And the only difference, again, to just keep hammering this point home, is the difference between her changing to a place of intentionality and creation and alignment between sales and goals versus being reactive and just kind of waiting for what was. Next, skip the slide. Okay, next most important thing for the greatest salesperson in the world is their internal dialogue and their belief systems. This is factually true that the subconscious controls 90 to 95% of actions. So for every single one of you, 90 to 95% of the things that you do are subconsciously driven. So this is why alignment must come first, because you have to give yourself a North Star. It's a must. And then after you have that alignment, internal dialogue and belief systems come second. And when both are true, 100% of your actions will be in alignment with what you're creating. This ties back to intentionality, but your belief systems and your internal dialogue constantly create your outside world. It's the difference between it being a rainy day and you waking up and saying, man, I love rainy days. It gives me the opportunity to go dance in the rain and come inside and read a book and drink a cup of coffee, versus waking up and going, ah, damn, it's a rainy day. Looks like I'm not going to get all the things that I want today. Both are active and true realities. Both are dependent on the perspective and the belief system of the person. It's the same thing when a closer, let's say, has a day of 5 no-shows, no live calls, nobody's qualified. You can either look at that day and go, hell yeah, I just got given a bunch of leads that I'm going to call 82 times until they show up so I can make sure I have live calls tomorrow. And it's also good because in that free time, I got to do a bunch of follow-up. I got to listen to a bunch of sales calls. I got way better today. Today was a great fucking day. Versus the salesperson that goes, yeah, man, looks like I'm going to miss projections this week because this thing happened to me. You know, it was out of my control. This thing happened to me. And the words that we allow to be true in our head and our belief systems that we create determine our reality. So again, the greatest salesperson in the world consciously curates their belief systems and decides what they are. Most people in the world let the world tell them what to believe to be true. All of you need to understand this. All truth, all reality is dependent on what you decide to be true and what you curate and what you create. All reality will be based off of what you decide reality to be. And again, this is very hard for our brains to understand because our brains work through a system of inputs and outputs. So it's like, well, this thing happened to me. And so that tells me what my belief system is, and that changes how I act. The problem is your interpretation of that thing happening is taught. It's a learned behavior. It's learned by your parents. It's learned by society. It's learned by how you grew up of how to interpret the input. The greatest indicator of somebody's future net worth is the average net worth of the zip code that they grew up in. So the number one predictor in the United States of somebody's success is the net worth of the zip code that they grew up in. Well, why is that true? Because when you grow up in a wealthy neighborhood, you get taught how to receive inputs correctly, and you get taught belief systems that help you win. If you grow up in a very low income zip code, you either go relearn all those things and recognize that they're not conducive to wealth, or you just continue to abide by them and you end up the exact same way that you grew up. This makes sense to everybody? Let me know in the chat if everybody's with me. It's all making sense. All right. So we must monitor our thoughts and beliefs and consistently reorient them to be in alignment with who we want to become. And the results always follow the thoughts, not the other way around. Again, most people wait for the world to give them inputs. They try and synthesize those inputs into a belief system, into a data set, and then they use that to go interact with the world. The greatest and the best salespeople in the world, the greatest business people in the world, the best friends in the world, the best lovers in the world, consciously curate how they digest information and consciously curate their belief systems to what they want to be true. So, bulletproof beliefs that I hold on to that I think made me one of the best in the world. Number one is that I am the greatest salesperson in the world. Most of you, when you read this, will be like, well, you know, when I look at the closer spreadsheet or the setter tracker, that's not what it tells me. Like when I look at my performance last month, I'm obviously not the greatest person in the world. And to that, I would say, well, if you say so. Like, if that's what you want to be true, if that's how you want to digest that information, like, great. But for me, I just proclaim that from this moment on, I'm the greatest salesperson in the world. Number two, everyone I talk to, every single person I talk to, whether it's an outbound dial, a refund save, doesn't matter. Every person I talk to will buy from me at some point. It's just a matter of time. This belief lights me the fuck up because when I approach every single interaction knowing, man, it's just a matter of time before this person buys, every call is a win. Every interaction is a win. Even if you're a setter and you call somebody and they go, yeah, not interested, and they hang up the phone, you should still smile and be like, well, their ED is probably still going to be there in 3 months. Their hair is still going to be bald in 3 months. Like, dude, I'm just going to keep calling back. And at some point, you're going to give me the time of day. And at some point, you're going to want to talk to me. And at some point, I'm going to get you on a closer's calendar. And closers, if you have a call, and let's say very clearly there's some logistical hurdles that cause them to not close right then and there, you should walk away smiling that you know that they're going to buy from you, that you created a plan with them, that you created relation with them, that they trust you. And then it's just a matter of time before they buy. And one of the things that I see defeats salesperson people so much is you create this like win-lose scenario in your head where it's like, well, They either gave me a credit card or they didn't. And if they didn't give me the credit card, looks like I lost, looks like I did the wrong thing. And then guess what? Because you now believe that to be true, it's fucking true. Like when you walk away from a call being like, oh, they were bullshitting me. Oh, I didn't handle the objections. Oh, this negative thing happened. That is now reality. Promise. Every single time. Number 3, I lead and help everyone make the absolute best decision for themselves every single time. No matter what the scenario is, whether it's me coaching all of you, whether it's on a sales call, whether it's talking to a client, whether it's talking to another internal team member, I lead and I help everyone make the absolute best decision for themselves. Ultimately, sales is just a game of deciphering the bullshit that they might not even be aware is bullshit to help them align themselves with their actions and their goals and leading them to the best decision for themselves. Number 4, I have infinite energy and will do whatever is necessary to hit projections. Whatever is necessary. There's 2 stories that I tell all the time because I love them so much. One of them was when I very first started with RCA. I think it was like my 3rd week. And at the time, Cole Gordon, my partner at the time, was still kind of running sales meetings. And we were kind of like, it was a small company. So we'd all just have these big sales meetings with both teams. And it was Friday afternoon at like 2:00. And I think I was traveling that weekend or had stuff going on. And so I knew I didn't have space to take calls. And I submitted my end of day report at like 2:00 and I missed by 1. And Cole called me and he's like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? It's only 2:00. Like you told me you have all day open on Friday and you're out of town Saturday, Sunday. Like you still have 6 more hours of sales time. And I was like, yeah, but dude, I have no more calls. It's week 3. I've called every single person in my pipeline. Like there is nobody to close. Like, what do you want me to do? And he was just like, well, dude, figure it out. And at the time we had a Facebook group. And so I posted in the Facebook group and I was like, hey, if any of you want to learn how to make 10 grand a month as a closer, I'll teach you right now. And I got a bunch of comments and I just started like Facebook Messenger calling people that commented. And within an hour, I had it close. And I can tell so many more stories of that, of salespeople who got to a certain point in the week, gave up, got called out on it, whether by their team or by me or by somebody else, and then found a way to still hit projections. Number 5, maybe the most important, is that I am the creator. So my close rate, my income, all the things that I desire are mine to create. They're mine to control. And one of the things that I see really mess up people in business is that they believe that there's all these external things that will determine their results. It's like, oh, it's dependent on how many leads I get. It's dependent on how many live calls I get. It's dependent on how cooperative the leads are this week. Bullshit. Every single one of you can decide to be the creator of your outcomes, or you can be reactive and hope that those outcomes fall into place. One will get you everything that you want. The other will put you as a feather in the wind, and you might by chance stumble upon what you want, but it's probably a low probability. Leadership and service. So this is supposed to say the greatest form of leadership is holding truth paramount. In any phase of business, marketing, setting, closing, client care, helping someone see the truth in a situation is the ultimate form of leadership. And truthfully, all objection handling is ultimately just a verbal dance to help isolate the truth of a situation. So all objection handling is ultimately just a verbal dance to help people isolate the truth of a situation. And truthfully, most people are just unconscious of the truth and are just reacting. Like when you get to a point in that sales call where they're like, yeah, I don't know, I just need to think about it. And you're like, well, help me understand what's going on. And they're like, yeah, I just need to think about it. They're not logically aware of the truth. They just are having an emotional reaction, whether it's to the price being too high, them not feeling like they're worth investing into. They might have grown up with parents that say that spending money on yourself is a waste of time. They might have a partner that says that because they haven't done all these other things right, that they don't deserve to invest in themselves, whatever it may be. And they're just having a reaction. And it's our job as salespeople, as a setter or a closer or a clinic manager, wherever we're at in this company, to just isolate the truth and help people find it. So leadership and service will allow you to find the truth and help every single person you interact with find the solution for themselves. this is maybe the most important slide of the entire thing for us as a company right now, which is standards and projections. So the greatest salesperson in the world has impeccable self-standards. The water you drink, the food you eat, the bed you sleep in, the clothes you wear, everything you do creates an energetic field around you, and that'll either attract people or it will repel people. And standards should not come from a place of guilt and shame and self-loathing. They should come from a place of self-love and desire to be the best, absolute, highest version of yourself. And when you look at a lot of the things you do in a mirror, let's say it's overeating. Ultimately, overeating is just a form of self-punishment. It's not a form of self-love. When you look at something like, okay, well, I'm going to put good water and healthy food into my body, and you do that from a place of self-love, it's elevating you to have a high energetic field. And when you are not taking care of yourself and not setting high standards for yourself and the things you do, the people you talk to, the content you consume, the clothes you wear, all the above, it creates an energetic field around you. And the people you talk to will feel it. Remember, we talked about Heisenberg principle and quantum entanglement. If you're a setter on the phone and you have remarkably high self-standards, the person on the other end of that line has no choice but to feel that energy. When you're a closer or a clinic manager or wherever you're at in our company, if you have remarkable self-standard, it is an energetic law that people must feel that to be true. And when people feel that to be true, what's the order of consequence? Well, if that person takes care of themselves, they'll probably take care of me. If that person can lead themselves well, they'll probably lead me well. If that person loves themselves, they probably have the capacity to love me. If that person obviously cares about the things that he or she does, they're going to care about the things that I do. Oh man, that person, they don't take care of themselves. Why would they take care of me? Man, like they don't have confidence. They don't have love. They feel dead on this call. They're probably going to make me feel the exact same way. And so your standards will always be a reflection of how people react to you every single time. This is a funny example, but I always think about it. Have any of you ever just been somewhere in public and you've seen a man or a woman or whoever, and they're just like fucking sharp? Like they're dressed well, they're groomed well, their hair looks good, they look healthy. And you look at them and you're like, that's a person I would trust. I don't even know why, but like I would do what that person says. Like everything about them screams like that's a person who takes care of themselves. Like that's a person I can trust. And all of us can create that same aura. All of us can create that same energy, but it has to come from intention. It has to come from us being intentional in that creation, like I said earlier. So projections, weekly and monthly projections in this company are a must hit. They are a must do. And we have two outcomes that are in the realm of possibility. Number one, we hit projections no matter what it takes. Number two, we do everything in our power to hit and we miss. And then we return and report with detail as to why and what we will change moving forward. To be super honest with all of you, like in self-reflection as a leader for sales in this company, I've been very disappointed with the culture I've allowed to be built around this specifically. And it's going to change. But like one thing that just like breaks my heart is when a closer is like, yeah, I've had 4 live calls this week and I'm just not taking calls this weekend. Because I want to look at you and just be like, well, if you've had 4 live calls, that means you've done 4 hours this week of like active work. If we add in an hour of sales meeting and 2 hours a day of follow-up, that's still what, like 18 hours, 20 hours? Like, why don't you just go distribute 4 hours on Saturday and 4 hours on Sunday and hit projections? And when you tie all of this together, all of this is done in sequential order. Ultimately, what I'm trying to help all of you do and see is that these are all the culmination of all of you becoming your highest self. So the highest version of you doesn't go, oh, let's fucking go. It's the weekend, time to chill. The highest version of you goes, you know what? I know what I'm trying to consciously create in this life. I wrote down my goals every day this week. Like, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is. It doesn't matter what time it is. That's all in abstraction anyways. It's all just like a bizarre societal norm of like creation of this thing called weekend that we like give all this power to. and you let your lower self just fall into that societal norm. And I'm not saying that means we don't take time to rest and recuperate and spend time with family, but that must come on the back of us doing everything we can to live into our highest self. Does this make sense to everybody? And as a byproduct to all of you living into your highest self, guess what will also be true? You'll be healthy, you'll be happy, you'll love the way you look, you'll show up better for your loved ones, you'll show up better for people in your life, you'll create better friendships, you'll attract better people into your life. And all of the things that all of you have desired for the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years will start to manifest. They'll start to be true. But when you fall into these belief systems and these societal norms and you don't honor your word and you don't live within highest self, you're just keeping yourself in this same hamster wheel that a lot of you feel like you're in, of like, well, I've had all these goals for so long and I'm just not getting them. And what can be true for every single one of you is you can wake up 3 months from now with a 50% close rate or a 40% set to close rate. You could be making $18,000, $20,000, $25,000 a month. Every single one of you could be leading teams or starting new offers in springs or doing incredible things. But all of that comes on the back of living into your higher self and creating your reality, not falling into lower self and just like falling back into norms and not regarding your word. So this is a must change for us as a company. We must hold ourselves to a higher standard and we must treat projections as our word and as our bond. Because when we do that, we're aligning with higher self and we're becoming the absolute best versions of ourselves. We're serving more clients. We're serving our family better. You win at levels you can't even imagine. Let me know in the chat, I'd like to hear from everybody. Is everybody on board with this slide? All right, beautiful. State management. Great salespeople approach the day with surety, confidence, strength, and a grounded energy. And these things are consciously created. So again, great salespeople approach the day with surety, confidence, strength, and a grounded energy. And these are consciously created. Before I go into the must-dos, remember what I said earlier about how most people wait for inputs and then they synthesize those inputs and those inputs create their state and their output? That's a weak system. It's dependent on what you see on social media. It's dependent on what kind of text you get. It's dependent on what kind of day your partner's having. It's very weak. All energy and all state can be consciously created. You can decide what you want to be true. So these are my must-dos for an unshakable state. Meditate for 30 minutes every single morning. The first 10 minutes, I write out all of my goals and intentions for the day. I then spend 20 minutes feeling into my desired state and the joy of knowing that these goals are already accomplished. Because I said they are, they are. Because I hold the belief system that I'm the creator of my reality. When I say that a goal is done, it's done. And then I get to spend 20 minutes meditating on creating my desired state and feeling the joy of those things already being accomplished. And some of you will hear that and be like, Bryan, that's a stupid way to live. Like, you're just, how would you assume something is when it isn't? Well, that whole like it isn't is just you deciding that it isn't. It's your broken viewpoint of the world. When I say something is, it is. And I'm just going to ensure that it happens because I said it is, it is. When I say I'm going to hit projections, there is no, I'm not hitting projections. Like I said that I will, so I will. Does this make sense to everybody? Number 2, I review one call every single morning. The best thing a salesperson can do is review a one call every single morning and use it as an anchor and a reminder for what you're capable of doing. And then 3, every evening, review calls from the previous day. Don't do the same day ones because you're still digesting them. Review calls from the previous day that didn't close and learn. One of the best things you can do for yourself is approach lost calls from a place of curiosity. When you create this state of like, oh man, I fucked up, I did this thing wrong, yada, 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 I have to learn, and you approach learning from a place of negative that you're trying to turn into a positive, it'll just stay a negative. A negative plus a positive equals a negative every single time. But when you approach something like a lost call or a no-showed set and you say, man, well, I know what I'm creating, so I'm just going to be curious and learn from this and get better from it from a place of optimism and reason and positive emotion, you're going to get a positive out of it. Does that make sense to everyone? You need to approach the learning from a place of curiosity and power, not from a place of like guilt and shame and I did something wrong. When you approach it that way, you're just going to do more things that produce guilt and shame and get more wrong outcomes. State management continued. Physical state management. Here's things that I've seen help the most as a salesperson. Number one, wake up, hydrate, go for a long walk with no inputs, no headphones, no music, just go for a walk. Get ready for the day. Do your meditation, and then 60 to 90 minutes after you wake up, have caffeine or green tea or whatever you like. I like putting MCTs in it. I think it helps me a lot. Number two, eat very low carb until the end of the day. This will help with your glucose and blood sugar levels. You'll feel much more stable. And then aim to move every 4 hours. So if you have let's say a 10-hour open day of call blocks, I would make sure every 4 hours you get some movement in. I keep a treadmill and a Peloton and a sauna and a cold plunge in my house because of the value of creating circulation and blood flow and movement. You can buy like a bike on Amazon for like $100 and put it next to your desk and rip 10 minutes of movement when you have time. But keeping yourself active is super important. And then for mental state management, journal every single day and reflect on beliefs, mindset, and thoughts. Meditation 2 to 3 times a day. And then you have to be very cautious of your inputs on technology and information because everything has energy. And so if you end up spending an hour doom scrolling on stuff that has a low frequency or a low energy, that will transmute into yourself. The greatest salespeople in the world, they raise the tide for everyone around them. Leadership is universal. People that end up leading teams or companies were leading others way before the title ever came. So one of the things that's the funniest paradox to me is when somebody's like, Bryan, I really want to be a leader in this company. What do I have to do? And I go, well, what are you doing to lead now? And they're like, well, I help people from time to time. And ultimately, leaders get a title after it's already remarkably obvious. And when you have an energy of raising up people around you, it's actually raising the tide of energy of everything around you, which makes it easier. And selfishly, it just makes your life way easier to be a top performer when everybody else around you is a top performer. And we must love and lead the people around us. If a teammate is performing below standards, lead them through it. One of my biggest keys to success personally has been only allowing people around me with high standards. And we must get better at this as a team. And all of you need to speak up to each other, to your leader, to me, to Charles, to whoever, when you see things that are below the standard of the culture that we're trying to create. Because when you do that, it actually just makes your life a whole lot easier. Like when every person to your right and to your left has impeccable self-standard, you'll just become that as a byproduct. And we create this group effect where all of us just end up becoming the best in the world. But we don't do that by being siloed individuals and just only focusing on ourselves. And then lastly, the best salespeople in the world own their book of business. So I need all of you to recognize that like leads assigned to you are your book of business. If you're a setter and a lead gets assigned to you, that's your book of business. If you're a closer and something gets put on your calendar, that is your book of business. To give you some reference, on average for all of our teams right now, for a call to be booked on your calendar as a salesperson, it costs about $150 in ad spend for a singular booked call. So when you look at your calendar and you see those double bookings, that's $300 in ad spend. And I don't say that as like all of you are doing something wrong. I say that in the sense of like, if all of us want to build Springs to be the best company in the world and do all these incredible things and hit our goals, every single one of us needs to raise the tide and recognize that these are our book of business. And if you have no shows, like call them 82 times, get them back on your calendar. When you take a live call, make sure that you took notes on that call and they're in a pipeline and you're monitoring that pipeline and you're calling people weekly, you're texting them weekly. If you're a setter, every lead that gets assigned to you is your book of business. And when you treat it that way and you're not just in this reactive state of like, let's see who gets assigned to me today, let's see who shows up today, you'll win at levels you can't even imagine. But we must get better at truly serving every single lead that comes into our ecosystem and take a more aggressive approach to lead nurture, follow up, show rate, and calendar management. Hey, if you love that training, my name is Bryan Ostermiller. I've coached at this point over about 4,000 sales reps through a sales coaching program, and then also worked with hundreds one-on-one. I've scaled sales teams from 0 to $1 million a month, 0 to 2.5 million a month, and have done it across multiple industries and have multiple people not only scale their teams, but go from setter to closer, closer to sales manager to chief revenue officer. That's what I'm the best in the world at. If you want to get more coaching from me, I just launched a community called Sales Generators, where I'm teaching not only all the high performance things that allowed me to make multiple seven figures in the sales industry, but have also helped hundreds make 6 and 7 figures. There'll be a link to click below. Come join. It's $49 a month. I'll teach you everything that I've learned, and we will leave no stone unturned.